These magical jars are my secret panic preventers. Whether it's an emergency or downright disaster, or just a hectic Wednesday, they save the day every time. No fridge, no freezer, no canner, no problem. You'll be so thankful to have these in your pantry. Hey guys, it's Cheryl with Wicked Prepared. Welcome back to the channel. Today I've got some brand new meal in a jar recipes for you. Why do so many people love meals in a jar? Because they're the solution to so many problems. They're perfect for emergencies and power outages because they're shelf stable, they're just add water, and they're quick to prepare. Because I promise you, when the power's out and it is cold and dark in your house, you're not going to want to be rummaging around in your dark cupboards or your pantry, gathering ingredients, or spending hours and hours cooking rice and beans. You're going to want quick, easy, and comforting. But you're going to want something better than canned soup, SpaghettiOs, or ramen. This is the best of both worlds. It's homemade goodness that's super stupid easy. Emergency preparedness is often what gets people started with meals in a jar, but it escalates quickly. Before you know it, they're reaching for them on busy nights, so they don't have to grab takeout or eat cereal for supper. They're taking them on camping trips and in their RV. They're giving them to their young adult children or their elderly parents to make sure that they always have a warm meal. They're even giving them as gifts to just about anyone. There's nothing these jars can't do. It's soup season, so today's video is another installment in my Soups Meal in a Jar series. And I've got more coming, so take a second to make sure you're subscribed to the channel. YouTube has been added again, and we have heard from so many people that have been unsubscribed without their knowledge. So take a look down below and make sure that's not you. Today, I've got 3 brand new classic soup recipes for you, and they are delicious. The first soup is a Greek lemon chicken soup, and it is so good. It combines the familiarity and comfort of a chicken soup with an exotic and slightly fancy flair. I just love a twist on an old classic. Let's get started. For this soup, I am using a 1.5 pint jar. These are one of my favorite sizes of jars. I was really sad when Ball stopped carrying them. I do have a lot of them that I bought while they were still available, but I was really excited to find that Azure Standard now makes a jar this size. So if you don't have any jars like this and you want to get some, I will put a link down below to where you can get them. They're awesome jars. They come with really good lids and they're a good price. But if you don't have any 1.5 pint jars and you can't get your hands on any, then you could definitely do this in a quart jar and just have a little bit of extra space, and that would be fine. I've got my canning funnel to get all the ingredients in. And the first ingredient I'm starting with is something a little bit new that I haven't worked with a lot. It is egg yolk powder, because this is something, egg yolks are a big part of a soup like this. I'm going to be adding 3 tablespoons of this egg yolk powder. I will have links down below to where you can find all of the ingredients if there's anything that's a little bit harder to find. You can look down there, and I will put it down there for you. And then if I have any coupon codes to go along with anything, I always put those down there as well. So that's 3 tablespoons of the egg yolk powder. Next, I am adding my chicken bouillon. I'm adding 1 tablespoon of the chicken bouillon. Now you can use whatever bouillon you have that you like. I have several different brands that I use, just whatever I have on hand to use up. Usually most bouillons typically call for usually around a teaspoon of powder for every cup of broth that you're making, for every cup of water. This one I think is 3/4 of a teaspoon, but it's close. So check your bouillon if you're using something different. I will put down in the description below the video the brands that I use on all of this stuff, so you can get it to match up exactly. But if you use something different, just check the measurements of how much it uses to make a cup of broth, and you might need to adjust a little bit from there if it's not like 3/4 of a teaspoon to a teaspoon. Next, I'm adding some freeze-dried minced garlic. This is a whole nother world from garlic powder. Freeze-dried minced garlic is amazing. It's so garlicky, and it's really great and easy to throw into anything if you're a garlic lover like I am. So I'm using a 1/2 tablespoon of the freeze-dried minced garlic. This is out of a larger container, and I decanted it into this little mason jar. This is another uncommon size. This is the tall jelly jar, so it's like 3/4 of a pint. Another one that Ball discontinued that Azure Standard now carries. So I'll put a link for this down below because I know people are always looking for jars like these. But if you are decanting a larger, like a number 10 can of freeze-dried food, and you're splitting it into smaller portions for you to use one at a time, just so that it doesn't, get any moisture to it or anything, if you use it in a slower manner, it's really good to use mason jars. A lot of times people will open up a large can of freeze-dried food and put it into smaller mason jars and seal them up. You can even put an oxygen absorber in if you want to preserve that even longer, and then just use one jar at a time, and then you're not getting into your big can over and over again if it's something that's going to take you a while to use up. And speaking of big number 10 cans of freeze-dried food, I just got something I wanted to show because I know my meal in a jar people will definitely appreciate this. I just got this can opener with this crank handle. I have had my eye on these for a really long time and just never grabbed one. And then I ran into one on sale when I was looking at stuff online. So I got this and I just tried it out and I've got to show you, it's amazing. It's got a nice rubbery grip. I like that. I'm going to go ahead and open this can of ground beef. Oh, wow. This is amazing. Like, I cannot open these cans this easily with my, wow, that was amazing. And here is the hamburger. Yummy. All right, back to this recipe. Next, I'm adding some lemon juice powder. Now, this is one that I get from Firehouse Flavors. I really like their lemon juice powder, lime juice powder, orange juice powder. I really like their juice powders. Pineapple juice powder, I use them all. So I'll have a link down below to where you can get this. And I'm going to be using a teaspoon of the lemon juice powder. I do not think this is really necessarily equivalent to just, what is it called? Just lemon, just lime. I think it's called something else, but it's a product you can get at Walmart, sometimes Dollar Tree. I have had a little bit of experience with those. They don't seem to work the same way as the lemon and lime juice powders, but if that's all you have and all you can get, you could try that. You just need to mess around with the amounts a little bit and play around with it. So next I'm adding some of this lemony dill seasoning. Now this is a seasoning blend. You can see it's got kind of a bunch of different components to it. I like that because it's, you know, a lot of different seasonings and flavors all in one container. I'm using a tablespoon of the lemony dill seasoning. This smells so good. It tastes really good. I love this on salmon. This is really good on salmon, good on chicken dishes. It's going to be great in this soup. So the next ingredient I'm adding to my soup is going to be some orzo. Now, if you're not familiar, orzo is a pasta, but it's kind of like a little teeny rice-shaped pasta. It works really well in this soup. You can also use rice in this soup. It's kind of one of those soups where people usually either use orzo or rice. I'm going to show you different variations where you can do this with rice or you can do this with the orzo. Another thing I've seen people use, but I haven't tried it, is an Israeli couscous, which is like a larger grain couscous. So you could try that as well if you happen to have that on hand. I'm using 1/3 cup of the orzo. Now I'm using orzo and I really like this with the orzo, but this is a really versatile recipe. So you could do this with rice instead of the orzo. You're just going to change the amount a little bit. So if you want to use rice instead of orzo, you can use 1/2 cup of instant white rice, which is otherwise known as minute rice. And that's going to cook for about the same time. It might even need a minute or two less than the orzo. Just make sure that your chicken is tender all the way through and give it the same 10-minute rest time at the end. This could be a good option for people who need to be gluten-free if you can't find a gluten-free orzo. Next, I'm going to be adding some freeze-dried mirepoix. Now, mirepoix is a blend of carrots, onions, and celery that have been chopped up and mixed together. So it's a seasoning blend, and I absolutely love mirepoix. It's so versatile. It starts so many dishes off really well. I love this, starting a lot of dishes. You just start with a quick saute of this, even if you're just cooking from fresh. This is really good to have on hand. If you don't have fresh carrots, onion, and celery, or you don't have time to chop them up, or any of that, you can just grab a scoop of that, throw it in your dish, and go to town. Next, we're going to be adding our freeze-dried chicken. Now, I am using pulled chicken. This is my favorite freeze-dried chicken. This is amazing. It's just as if you took your own rotisserie chicken from the store and, you know, pulled the meat off of it. It's really, really good. And the shredded chicken works perfect in this recipe and a lot of other recipes. And what I found is that most any chicken recipe that I have with a meal in a jar that uses freeze-dried chicken, even if I have used a diced chicken or a sliced chicken or any other chicken product that I've used in the recipe, usually this is a good stand-in. It will really work in just about any recipe. So if you're looking to buy, you know, to start with just one freeze-dried chicken product, this is the one I would do. And if you have your own freeze dryer and you're doing chicken, I think that pulled chicken, shredded chicken is really one of the most versatile ways you can do it. 1 cup of the freeze-dried pulled chicken. Next, I'm going to be adding a bay leaf. Now, this is something that my mother used to use all the time. She used to throw a bay leaf or two into every soup and stew she made, I feel like. I remember these a lot when I was a child, and it's something that as an adult, I never really used. I just never saw it called for in a recipe. It just wasn't in my habit, I guess. And so I did get some and decided to start using them more because, you know, even just for nostalgia's sake, it is supposed to impart a little bit of a flavor nuance to your dishes. These leaves, if you're not familiar with them, which probably most people are, but if you're not, they're very hard and brittle and they're not going to soften when you're cooking. So you're going to remove it after cooking. It's just going to put a little bit of flavor into the food. They also have other uses, like using them around your pantry and in your like buckets of food and containers of food to keep pests away. So it's a good thing to have on hand. So I'm going to add a bay leaf into my jar. I think I'm going to get a slightly smaller one because this is a smaller recipe and I don't want to break the leaf. They are brittle, so they do break. Just going to lay that one bay leaf in there. And next, I'm going to add a few of these freeze-dried lemon slices. Now, this is something that it doesn't really have a measurement. You can put in however much you want. This is going to add a little bit of extra lemon flavor to this dish. So it is kind of part of the recipe. And these are really, really awesome to have on hand anyways. Like, they're really good to put into drinks, whether it's a soda or your water, if you like lemon in your water, tea, cocktails, anything like that. They're great to have on hand. I like to lay them on top of salmon or fish when I'm baking it. You can put them inside of a chicken cavity. Lots of different uses for these, so I do like to have these around. If you don't have these, you don't want to get them, you can't put them in here. You may or may not want to use a little bit of extra of the lemon juice powder. Depending on how lemony you like it, I would definitely try it with the 1 teaspoon at first. But if you like a little bit of extra lemon flavor, these lemon slices are going to give that. So if you don't have those, you could add a little extra lemon powder. Now all that remains is to add our oxygen absorber and seal our jar. And then you definitely want to make sure to label your jar so that you know what dish is inside. So now this jar is all ready to go on the shelf. But I am not going to put this on the shelf today. Of course, I'm going to cook this up for you and show you how quick and easy this comes together for a delicious, comforting soup. Got my soup pot. Now the first step before I add this jar to my pot is I'm going to open it up and, of course, remove the oxygen absorber. And I am going to remove the lemon slices and just set those aside. The bay leaf is going to stay in for the cooking process. Just empty that right into the jar, into the pot. Empty the jar into the pot. And I'm going to go ahead and add my water. I am adding 4 cups of water, but I always pour the water first into my jar so that I can rinse out any residual powders that are left behind when I empty it, just because I want to make sure all that flavor goes into our recipe. Of course, this 1.5 jar is only 3 cups, so I'm just going to mix this until it gets blended. We just want to make sure to get all of those powders blended in. Doing this recipe this way is saving us a step that's traditionally in a soup like this with the egg yolk. Usually has to be tempered, and it's kind of like a fussy step towards the end that you have to do. And doing it this way, we are going to avoid having to do that, which is really, really nice. And go ahead and turn on my heat. And I'm going to put this up pretty high because the first step is just going to be to bring it up to a simmer. And I want to do that quickly. And for that same reason, I'm also going to keep a lid on my pot because that's going to keep our heat in and it's going to conserve fuel and just make our cooking process a little bit more efficient. Now you can see this is starting to simmer, so I'm going to go ahead and turn this down and just keep it at a gentle simmer. And this is just going to have to cook long enough for that orzo to cook and absorb the liquid and for the chicken to become fully tender. Both of those are going to be really pretty quick because that orzo pasta is small. And freeze-dried chicken comes back really, really quickly and easily. So this is going to be a really fast soup. All right, this has been simmering for 8 minutes. It has gotten thicker and creamier. Let's just check on the chicken and the orzo. All right, that chicken feels nice and tender. I usually try to pick a big piece of meat to check because the bigger pieces will take a little bit longer. There's a piece of orzo. All right, that orzo is pretty tender, so this is going to set for about 10 minutes, and that'll definitely be enough to finish up that orzo. I mean, it's pretty much tender enough right now, but it can set the extra 10 minutes, and it will be fine. So I'm going to turn off the heat. For the 10-minute standing time, I am just going to float these lemon slices on top of the soup. They will start to soak up the liquid and rehydrate as they sit. Now, these are going to impart some flavor into the soup as they sit, and they're kind of like a tea bag. The longer they sit, the more flavor they're going to impart. So if you're not real big on lemon flavor, you may want to taste the soup before you put the lemon slices in. And you can also wait until after the 10-minute sitting period when you're just before you're ready to serve the soup. Or you could leave the lemon slices off entirely and just let each person add one to their own bowl if they so desire. It does add a lot to the flavor. I like the way that it enhances the flavor, but depending on how much you like lemon, you might want to play around with this a bit. So we're going to let this set for 10 minutes. All right, this has been sitting for 10 minutes and it looks gorgeous. Ready to dig in. All right, I cannot wait to give this a try. Give that a little stir. And here is our beautiful lemon chicken soup. All right, I cannot wait to dig into this soup. Oh, wow. This is amazing. It's delicious. It's comforting. This would be amazing if somebody was sick. Imagine this with the citrus and the chicken noodle. It's like a whole nother twist on a chicken noodle soup. And this would be amazing to bring to somebody who was sick. Oh my God, this is so good. The egg yolk powder in this recipe gives it a rich, velvety creaminess without using any dairy ingredients. I think that's perfect because I love chicken soups for like sickness, but with a lot of sicknesses, you're going to want to avoid dairy. So this just works. In fact, egg yolk is actually very good for immunity, and so is lemon. So this soup is a step up from your average chicken soup. Before we move on to the next soup, let's talk about ingredients for just a minute. The best way to save money on meals in a jar is to keep an eye out for sales and grab things when they're on sale. Ingredients for meals in a jar like these are also great prepper pantry items to build your food security. It's a smart investment, and the best way to do it is to buy a few things every month with at least part of your purchases being sale items. Stock up gradually but consistently, and before you know it, you will have a whole arsenal of ingredients, not only for meals in a jar, but also just for your general preparedness and food security. I wanted to take just a minute to share a few sales and pricing events going on right now that relate to meals in a jar. TryFreezeDried.com is your one-stop shop for deals on freeze-dried food. Bookmark that site because you can always find the current sales, coupon deals, all sorts of things. If you're watching this video within the first couple days, you'll find a coupon there for a great deal on freeze-dried steaks, beef, and seafood. If you check in later, who knows what you'll find. And you'll always find our code, Wicked Prepared, that you can use anytime that you aren't using another coupon. On this page, you can find current January specials on number 10 cans, including up to 30% off brand new freeze-dried meats and proteins. There's also an extensive price list posted with some significant crazy price drops on freeze-dried and dehydrated foods. It's pretty incredible in this current economy to see a company actually decreasing prices, and with the market the way it is, there's no telling how long it'll last until they start to rise again. So I'm taking advantage of this one right now. I'll have links to all these deals down below the video. I'm also going to try to put QR codes on the screen for those of you who watch on your TV. Another sale going on right now includes 30% off of all kinds of produce, fruits and vegetables, including those lemon slices I just used. There are some really, really delicious, unique, and hard to find items that are great for both snacking and meals in a jar. I have a coupon code for you here as well. You can use it. It's my name, Jara, and that's going to give you an extra discount on top of the sale prices. That 30% off sale is going on through the end of the month. And there is another sale going on, 30% off, an inventory reduction sale on freeze-dried and dehydrated items that includes a lot of the instant beans that I use in my meals in a jar. I use those all the time and people are always asking where I get them. This is a great source and they're on sale right now. And the award for most interesting freeze-dried items goes to one of our favorite stores who just for the next couple days has a coupon code for 15% off site-wide. You can have a lot of fun looking around here, and they also have some hard to find meal in a jar ingredients as well, in addition to the fun stuff. You can use my code Wicked Prepared here as well, anytime for a 10% discount, anytime there's not a better coupon for you to use. That lemony dill seasoning I used in the last recipe, that's part of a sale that's going on right now, and you can get a discount by purchasing it in a 3-pack with a couple of other seasonings that I'm actually using in one of my next recipes today. Besides checking tryfreezedried.com for sales and coupon codes, we also have a Facebook group that you can join. And I post prepping deals and things there that I find as I'm shopping around. And we have a text alert service that we offer as well for our viewers. That's the best way to get the best prices because I'll text you directly when there's a new sale or coupon code. It's a lot harder to miss those texts than it is an email or a Facebook post. We have our regular list that you can join by texting alert. I usually text no more than 2 to 3 times a month, so it is sufficient for like monthly sales. If you don't mind hearing from me a few times a week possibly, then the best way is to join our insider list by texting insider. This way you won't miss a thing. And if you're having a hard time finding any specific ingredients, you can just text me anytime and I'll help you out if I can. Okay, moving on to our next soup. The next soup is a lentil soup. I know it doesn't sound very glamorous, but trust me when I say it's delicious. There's a restaurant called Carrabba's, and they make a lentil soup that everyone seems to love. I'm not sure if I've ever even been to a Carrabba's. I may have eaten there once, but I don't think I had a lentil soup. But my mom really enjoys their lentil soup. So she came up with her own version, and then she taught me how to make that lentil soup, and I turned it into a meal in a jar. So I wouldn't necessarily say that this is a copycat, but it's definitely Carrabba's inspired. And it's definitely yummy, so let's make it. For the sausage lentil soup, I am using a wide mouth quart jar. And for my first ingredient, I'm adding some freeze-dried sausage. I am doing 3/4 cup of the sausage. This sausage is absolutely amazing. It is so delicious. I actually like to snack on this dry sometimes. It says hot sausage, but I have been snacking on it and using it, and I don't really notice it to be hot. So if you're somebody who's very, very sensitive to spicy, maybe you want to use something milder. I'm going to put a link to this down below the video. If you look, I can see little, reddish, orangish bits that I'm assuming would be like a spicy pepper. But really, I have not noticed it being very spicy. It is very flavorful, though. Very, very flavorful, which I like because there are a lot of brands of freeze-dried sausage that are just not very flavorful. So if you have a sausage that is not very flavorful, what I will do is I will sometimes add some extra sausage seasoning. Like with this one, I would add an Italian sausage seasoning. I have sweet, hot, mild. There's all sorts of different options. I will put a link to the ones that I use down below the video in case you are looking for that. I get a ton of people asking where I get those. So I've got my 3/4 cup of sausage in here. Now the next ingredient I'm adding is going to be my lentils. This is instant lentils. So this is different. Just like instant beans, they've been cooked and dehydrated, so they'll cook up much more quickly. Now lentils and split peas are actually a pretty good choice for a quick cooking like legume in your prepper pantry because they cook a lot faster than beans and they don't need a soaking. But they do still have to cook for at least about 25-30 minutes usually to get good and soft. And we're trying to make a meal that cooks more quickly than this. Number one, because a lot of our other freeze-dried ingredients definitely don't need to cook that long. And if we do, we don't want to just kind of turn them into mush and zap all the nutrition out of them by cooking them excessively. And number two, if we are in an emergency situation, we're going to want something fast and easy, and we're going to want to conserve our fuel, and we'd rather run our stove for 10 or 15 minutes versus 25 or 30 minutes. So if we have the choice, we'd rather run our stove a little bit less and save some fuel. So that is why I'm using instant lentils. I'm going to be adding 2 cups. So I've got 1 cup here and 2 cups. And I can definitely get these lentils to start to settle down into the spaces among the meat just by kind of shaking it, tapping it. Some people will give it a little jiggle like that. You can get those to settle down and make more room in the jar. Next, I'm going to be adding a couple of ingredients that kind of sound similar, but they're not the same. So I want to make sure that everyone knows the difference between these 2 ingredients that I'm using. So I'm going to be using tomato powder and tomato bouillon. So they are different. Tomato powder is just tomatoes. They've been freeze-dried and powdered up, so it's just literally tomatoes, nothing else. And tomato bouillon is basically like a chicken bouillon with some tomato added. So it's got salt, it's got all sorts of other ingredients, and it just has a little bit of tomato. So these are very, very different. You don't want to use them interchangeably. You don't want to mix them up. They definitely are different. They serve different roles in the recipe. Tomato powder is really a great versatile ingredient to have in your pantry because all you need to do is add water, and depending on the amount of water that you add, you can make tomato paste, tomato sauce, or tomato juice. And you can make all sorts of other things out of this, like spaghetti sauce, ketchup. The list goes on and on. It's very versatile, and it's just tomatoes. Tomato bouillon is also another really popular ingredient, especially in a lot of Mexican recipes, Mexican rice, things like that. But it's a good thing to have on hand if you like that. If you don't have it and you don't want to purchase it, which it's very easy to find, I get it right at Walmart. But if you don't, you probably could just use chicken bouillon, maybe a little bit of extra tomato powder in there, and get a similar effect. I do want to also point out that on some of my jars, I have these Parmesan cheese lids. This is a really great hack. These fit on the regular mouth mason jars. But on something like tomato powder, your bouillons are not going to be too affected by moisture. Like, this is just as airtight as the lid that comes on some of the bouillon powders that I use. But tomato powder and certain other powders like this are very, very susceptible to moisture and will turn into a rock hard brick. So I definitely don't use a lid like this. I use the canning type of lid that has a really good moisture-proof seal. Just something to keep in mind. I'm going to start with the tomato bouillon, and I'm using a tablespoon. And that is one thing that I do like about these Parmesan cheese lids, is that they make it easy to open and measure out your product. So I've got a tablespoon of the tomato bouillon. And next I'm using a half a tablespoon of the tomato powder. So tomato powder is really pretty potent. It gives a very nice, strong tomato flavor, and it also thickens things that you put in it. But you do have to tread lightly with it because it's pretty strong. I have made that mistake before and learned I really need to go pretty light on the tomato powder. But like with any of these recipes, you can adjust this to your tastes and your preferences. You may feel like you want a little bit more tomato or a little bit less. Test the recipe once and then make any adjustments before you make them up in bulk. Once again, I can get these seasonings to just kind of sink down into the rest of our ingredients so that we have plenty of room in the jar. And then the other seasoning ingredients that I have are right here in this little cup. I've got a teaspoon of Italian seasoning, and I've got a half a teaspoon of fennel seed and a half a teaspoon of garlic powder. Fennel seed is a really strong flavor in Italian sausage, and so it's going to be really good in this. Now, like I mentioned, if your sausage is not very flavorful, or if you couldn't find freeze-dried sausage, or you didn't have it and you just had a freeze-dried hamburg or ground turkey or ground other meat, you could add some of the sausage seasoning. The other thing you can add if you do like it spicy is some red pepper flakes. Next, I'm going to be adding some freeze-dried carrots. I am super, super excited to have this ingredient to work with because it can be difficult to find freeze-dried carrots. You find a lot of dehydrated carrots. That's a very different product. So if all you have is dehydrated carrots and you want to use that, you're going to want to cut the measurement down at least in half, maybe a little bit more, because dehydrated carrots are very potent. They have a very strong, very sweet flavor, and they shrink a lot. So you're not going to need as many. But these are freeze-dried, and I am using a half a cup. Dehydrated carrots have their place in some recipes, but this is a lot closer to what I do when I make this fresh. I have sliced carrots. Now, if you have some really big pieces, like this is a huge, huge piece of carrot, it must have come from the upper end, you can break these up into smaller pieces if you want, or even just into halves. That's one beautiful thing about freeze-dried food, is that it breaks completely easily, just snaps very easily. Or you can put it into a baggie and crush it if you want, if you don't care so much about, like if you want really small pieces, but I don't want super small pieces. I just don't want any really large ones. So I'm just going to break up a few of the largest pieces and just dump the rest of it on in. These are actually pretty tasty just on their own. If you want a healthier substitute for chips, these are really awesome. Next, I'm going to use some freeze-dried chopped onion. Just a quarter cup of the onion. This jar is getting pretty full. Once again, I can tap it. I can press down. I'm not going to get a whole lot of give from these lentils, but some other freeze-dried foods will press down a little bit. Luckily, we only have one more ingredient that we need to get in here, and that is some freeze-dried diced tomato. Now I am hoping to fit 3/4 of a cup into my jar. So here's my 3/4 cup of the freeze-dried diced tomatoes. I'll probably just do this without the funnel because I'd have to, like I mentioned, I can crush these down a little bit. These will compress. And there we go. And then, of course, just adding the oxygen absorber on the top and sealing the jar tightly. And we've got our sausage and lentil soup all ready to go. Now, I actually could have done this one with probably the tomatoes on the bottom, maybe then the onions, carrots or sausage, and that would have ended up probably looking a little bit nicer because I would have those brighter colors down bottom. Because when I put my label on my tag, it tends to cover up this top a little bit here. Sometimes if I put a sticky label on, it's going to be more down here. So it just depends on how you label them. If you put a hanging label like I do a lot, it can cover up the top and you don't see the prettiest layers. And this would have been okay if I would have put those down bottom because they are bulky and I could have let some of the other ingredients filter through and had plenty of room in the jar. Just a little thing to think about, but I'm not so worried about how they look. I'm more worried about how they taste and how much nutrition they are going to give us during tough times. Now I'm going to fix this up and show you how it comes out. And I'm going to use a bigger pot. So I'm using a regular soup pot. And I'm going to go ahead and open my jar of soup and just pour it into the pot. Being sure to remove the oxygen absorber. Give it a little help because I packed those tomatoes in. And once again, I'm putting my water into the mason jar just to rinse out any residual bits of anything that might be in there. I'm using 5 cups of water, 5 cups of cold water, and I'm giving this a mix to get everything blended. And now I'm going to go ahead and put the heat on and just have it pretty high just to bring this up to its initial simmer, at which point I will be turning it down and covering it and just letting it simmer until it's done. So I'm going to go get a lid for my pot. All right, you can see this is starting to bubble. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this down to a simmer, and then I'm just going to put a lid on it and let this cook for just until it's done. It's not going to need long, probably about 10 to 15 minutes. So I'm going to get this simmering, and I'll see you back here when it's done. All right, so this has been going for 10 minutes. There's a lot of steam, so I'm not sure if you can see, but this is looking really, really good. The lentils are definitely soft after just 10 minutes. I'm going to turn the heat off, and I'm going to give it that little 10-minute rest period, and I think it's going to be ready to serve. You can see that the sausage is completely tender all the way through because I can break it up with my spoon if I see a big piece. Carrots the same. If I see one that's bigger than I want, I can break it against the side of the pan because they're completely cooked through. The soup has thickened up nicely. This should be about the texture of like a chili. So, of course, if you like it a little bit brothier, you can add more water. I'm going to let this set for 10 minutes and then we'll be ready to eat. All right, this has been setting for about 10 minutes and you can see this is gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. Now this is how I like this soup, thick like this, but you could certainly add some extra water when you were cooking it if you wanted yours to be a little bit more brothy and a little bit thinner, but this is how I like this. All right, let's go ahead and give this one a try. Oh, perfect. This is absolutely perfect. I would have broken up some of these carrots a little bit smaller, but this is amazing. This is so delicious. This has even converted some of the lentil haters in my house. I just told them it's kind of like chili, but it's delicious. Lentil soup is one of those soups that's even better the second day, so don't worry if you have leftovers. It will definitely thicken as it sits, so feel free to thin it out with water or broth when you heat it up. My next soup meal in a jar is a loaded potato soup. This soup is very hearty, filling, and universally appealing. Almost anyone would like this soup. Let's get started. For this recipe, I'm using a wide mouth quart jar and, of course, my funnel. The first ingredient I'm starting with is my potatoes. Now, I will put the potato product that I used today down in the description box below the video. There's a lot of potato products out there. I have a lot of potato products, and today I wanted to use one. A lot of the ones I have are no longer available from the supplier. So I wanted to use something that you're still able to get today. But that being said, I do think this is a pretty forgiving recipe, and this is a pretty forgiving ingredient. Probably any chunked up potato product that you have will probably work pretty well in this recipe. You may need to adjust cook times or water amounts depending on whether what you have is freeze-dried or dehydrated, things like that. But I think it should work out. But I will put all of my sources down below as usual. I'm using 1 cup of these potatoes. Now this is the chunky aspect of the soup. Some people do their potato soup with just like mashed potato flakes and it's all smooth, but I like to have kind of smooth and chunks, as if you had made it from fresh potatoes and you kind of rough mashed them and left some chunks. So I usually include some kind of a diced potato product in my potato soup. But I am, of course, also including potato flakes. These are just mashed potato flakes. And I am using 1 2/3 cups. So I've got 1 cup right here. And I've got 2/3. Now, once again, a measuring cup set that has these odd, like 2/3 and 3/4 and things like that, they don't all have. It's really handy to have. So I will put a link to this one that I have down below the video. Now I'm going to give this jar a good jiggle and a tap, and probably put down a silicone mat before I start tapping because people get really, really nervous when I do that right on the counter. But you can really get a lot of extra space and a lot of extra stuff in your jar if you can get it to all kind of settle and all of the ingredients to kind of intermingle. Next, I'm using my instant milk, and I'm using 2/3 of a cup of the instant milk. I'm adding some sour cream powder, 1/3 of a cup of the sour cream powder, and I'm also using butter powder. These are all things that we love to have in our loaded potatoes. Sour cream, butter, all of the things. I'm low on butter powder, gonna have to open a new can, but I'm adding 1/4 cup of the butter powder. Next, I'm gonna do some freeze-dried chives. About 1 tablespoon of the freeze-dried chives. I'm adding chicken bouillon, 1 1/2 tablespoons. So there's 1 tablespoon, and there's my half. And next I'm adding a couple of seasoning blends. I'm adding Oso onion. What I like about these blends is that there's a lot of different seasonings all in one, so it kind of saves me buying and storing all these different seasonings that are all inside of here. This has onion, garlic, shallots, a little bit more chives, all sorts of stuff in here. So that's the Oso onion, 1 tablespoon. And I'm also doing a cheesy bacon chive seasoning blend because this is all of the things that we want in our loaded potato. So I've got 1 tablespoon of the cheesy bacon chive seasoning blend. And one more seasoning, I am going to add 1 teaspoon of black pepper because I think that goes really well with potato. And now I'm going to be adding some freeze-dried bacon. Bacon makes everything better. I absolutely adore bacon. Got to have bacon in my loaded potato, so it's going in my soup. This is freeze-dried bacon. I don't know if I mentioned that. They do have the bacon bits at the store. They are shelf stable for a little while when they're in their bag, but once that bag is opened, once you open the bag, they mold pretty quickly. So this is freeze-dried. I'm going to be using 1/4 cup of the bacon right in here into the soup. Now my jar is pretty full, but I am going to try to fit a couple more things in here and I'll show you what I'm going to do. All right, so what I'm doing here is I've got 2 baggies here, 2 of these fold top sandwich baggies. This is what I like to use when I'm adding separate ingredients to the top of the jar. And you can put 2 in here. I've done this before. And I just put them kind of half and half right next to each other. I'm going to be putting a couple of toppings in here, toppings that I want to have on my soup. And I can push this stuff down, the soup ingredients down if I need to. But I really want to have some cheddar cheese, some real cheddar cheese in my soup or on my soup. This is freeze-dried. I only have a little bit left here, but I only have room for a little bit, and that's fine. This is just a topping. I could put it in the soup, but cheese doesn't really do well. Freeze-dried cheese doesn't do well unless it's refreshed in cold water before you add it to a recipe. So really, I would have to put it separately anyways for this to turn out well, unless I wanted to powder the cheese, which I don't want to do. If I wanted to do that, I could have just bought some cheese powder. But so I'm going to put in a couple spoonfuls of this cheese into one of these bags. It's just going to be, so that's probably about 2 1/2, 3 tablespoons total. It just needs to be enough to top my bowls of soup. And I'm also going to put, you could just do cheese if you wanted. I am going to put a little bit of the bacon because we do have bacon in the soup, but I also want some bacon on top of the soup. I want it to be a nice crispy topping, and I think it'll look nice. I think it'll add to, the cheese itself is going to be too plain. I think I want a little bit of bacon on there as well. And just for good measure, I'm going to throw a little bit of the chives in there with the bacon because I don't want to refresh got to open the big side. I don't want to refresh the bacon with the cheese. I could just put it all in one bag and I could refresh the bacon, but I really like the bacon to be really crispy. I like it when it is really crispy. So I want it to stay crispy, so I don't want to put it in with the cheese. You could even leave the cheese crispy. Like honestly, I do like to snack on the cheese dry, so put it on salads dry. So it could be left crispy as well, but I do want this to kind of refresh and be melty. So I've got my 2 bags. So I'm just going to twist these closed gently and just tuck them right in there. So that's how I do that when I add some extra ingredients that I want separate, which I don't do very often because I kind of don't like that. The whole point with these meals is I like them to be easy. So I like them to be just open, pour, add water, go, off to the races. So this is not something I do often, but sometimes if it's worth it, I will. So now I'm just going to put in my oxygen absorber and add my lid. And this jar is ready to go with our potato soup. And now our loaded potato soup is ready to go on the shelf. But you know the drill. I am not going to put this on the shelf. I'm going to fix this up and show you how delicious and awesome this turns out. So I've got my pot here and let's get to making this soup. First things first, remove the oxygen absorber, and I'm going to take out these bags and I'm just going to hold them over my pot and give them a little shake in case there's any residual bits of bacon left on them from sitting in there, which there is. Just get those shaken off. Now I'm going to go ahead and add my soup mix to this pot. I'm going to go ahead and add my cold water. I'm going to be adding 5 cups of water. Of course, starting with pouring the water into my jar to rinse out all the residual powders. Oh, that already smells so good and buttery. I'm going to go ahead and just give this a mix. Get everything moistened. Now you could even take a whisk to this if you wanted to make sure that all your clumps were out, but I think this is pretty good. I think most of these clumps should kind of melt out on their own as the soup is heating and cooking. So I'm going to go ahead and put on the heat and just start by bringing this up to a simmer. And then this isn't going to have to cook very long, probably only about 10 minutes once we bring it to a simmer. Before I start the soup, I am going to go ahead and get my cheese started refreshing. This is not going to take very much, maybe like a half a tablespoon of water or just even a teaspoon, because a whole cup of freeze-dried cheese usually only takes about 3 to 4 tablespoons of water, and we don't have very much cheese here. You always want to start with cold water when you're refreshing freeze-dried cheese. And I'm going to do it right in the bag here. You can do it in a container where you can tumble it around and seal it up and put it in your fridge, but it can sit on the counter for the amount of time that we're going to be doing it. And so I'm just going to go ahead and throw my water right in this baggie. I'm just going to go ahead and sprinkle this in and just kind of toss and massage it around and set this aside while we cook our soup. All right, you can see this is starting to simmer and bubble around the edges. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this down and just keep it at a slow simmer for probably about 10 minutes. All right, this has been simmering for 10 minutes. A lot of steam. I'm going to turn this off for a second. So here is what it looks like after simmering for 10 minutes. Now, the only thing I need to check really for doneness in this soup is the chunkier bits of potato. So I'm going to check and make sure that those are done. And so whatever potato you used, that's what you're going to have to watch out for. Now, this is the texture. This is a nice thick, but still soupy. And this is how we like our potato soup. If you liked yours a little bit thinner, you could certainly add a little bit more water. I don't know if anybody would like their potato soup thicker than this. If you make it much thicker, you're just going to have bloated mashed potatoes. But this is how we like our potato soup. So let me check the chunky potatoes for doneness. And that is good. Now, this is the only soup out of the ones I'm doing today that doesn't really need to set for any amount of time after. It doesn't need that 10-minute setting time. And this will continue to thicken as it sets. So I'm going to serve this pretty much immediately. I've got my baggies of toppings. My cheese has hopefully come back to life and refreshed and soaked up all that water. So I'm going to go ahead and get a bowl of soup ready. All right, let's serve up our potato soup. Loaded potato soup. Look at how loaded that is. I love all of the bits and seasonings and chunks and flavorings. This is going to be amazing. And a nice potato soup like this is very, very filling and very hearty. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and just sprinkle a little bit of my toppings over top. So I've got my cheddar cheese, and then I've got my crispy bacon and chives. And how amazing does that look? All right, let's give this one a try. Look at the cheese pull. The cheese is melting. This is going to be so amazing. Oh, wow. This is absolutely fantastic. I love the extra touch of that crispy bacon on the top. Totally glad I left some out. This is absolutely delicious. Got the chunks of potato and then the smooth, creamy soup. And this would definitely fill up even the hungriest man. This potato soup will definitely get thicker as it stands. Actually, all of the soups that we made today will, but you can definitely add water or broth when you reheat them, even milk in the case of the potato soup. That is, if you have any leftovers. I usually get about 3 to 4 servings from a jar meal like these. This can vary a lot depending on the appetites of the people that you're feeding. It also depends on, are you serving the soup alone, or are you serving it with bread or salad or a sandwich? Or is it just a first course for a larger meal? I think all of these soups are amazing just on their own with maybe some bread served alongside. I do have a couple of meal in a jar bread recipes that I'll link down below. There's one for a simple mini French bread loaf and one for easy dinner rolls. Either one of those would go great with these soups, so you can fix up a jar and put them right on the shelf with the soup. I also like keeping a few bags of oyster crackers in the pantry. These are ready anytime with no preparation, and they can help stretch a soup and fill more bellies. Of course, if you have less bellies to fill, most meal in a jar recipes can be easily halved to serve less people. And that's perfect for single people, couples without children, or even a single parent with 1 or 2 small children with small appetites. I've even cut some meal in a jar recipes in thirds or even quarters. Another great thing about meals in a jar is that you can customize them to your own tastes and your own dietary needs. You control the quality of the ingredients that go in. What I recommend is trying each new recipe once the first time and then prepare it for your family to make sure you like it, because everyone has different tastes. If you need to make any adjustments, maybe you want more or less salt or seasonings, or you want to add some spice, maybe where you live and your environment, you need to adjust the water amount or the cooking time. Make notes of your changes and try it again until it's just right. Then line up your jars and your ingredients and make several jars at once, assembly line style. It doesn't take much more time or effort, and you can have a whole shelf full of meals in no time. It can even be a fun group or family activity. You can create a whole meal rotation or have some extra to share with others. Get a few friends together who also love meals in a jar and do a meal swap. That way, each person can focus on buying a smaller variety of ingredients in bulk, but everyone can end up with a wide variety of meals at the end. If you're looking for more meal in a jar recipes, check out my website, wickedprepared.com. There is a recipe section with recipe pages that you can download and print. And the recipes I did today, these newest recipes, are going to be there as well. We also have a meal in a jar playlist here on YouTube if you like the video tutorials. And I also have a soups playlist. I will link all of those down below for your binge watching pleasure. I hope you and yours enjoyed these soups as much as we did. If you made it all the way to the end of the video, leave me a lemon down in the comments and check out this video next for some more soup recipes that you're going to love. I'm Jara with Wicked Prepared. Survive today, thrive tomorrow. We'll see you next time.